Hammers Academy, everyone. We're going to do a little video series on this channel. We're going to call it the West Ham Media Tour. Going to talk to different folks in the different parts of the West Ham media space. Today, very special guest, James Jones from the We Are West Ham podcast. James, how are you?
Very good, thanks, Justin. Yeah, very good. Better now that West Ham are pretty good on the pitch as well, which makes a change.
That always makes things better. Winning always, cures any potential woes that we may experience as West Ham fans. So far, so good this season. A lot better than we all thought it would go. And I definitely want to talk to you about the team and the season thus far. But before we do, I just want to get into you a little bit personally. Talk to you a little bit about your West Ham fandom. Your media career. Let's start with the first thing. So, I mean, how did you become West Ham? Were you one of these people that were born into it through your family, or did you find it some other way?
I was born into it. Probably like quite a lot of West Ham fans, literally just had no choice. My dad was, from a very, very young age, he was like, "You're West Ham. This is the club you support." So much so that I remember very, very clearly, I can't remember how old I was, but I was very, very young, probably about 6 or 7 years old. And I went to school with a lot of the area that I grew up in, and sort of in and around sort of Essex and East London, North East London way was sort of Tottenham, Arsenal, a bit West Ham as well. But I had a lot of mates at school, sort of in primary school, that were Tottenham and other London clubs, and he said, "If you ever come home from school and tell me that you're a Tottenham fan, I'll make you homeless." And as a 6, 7 or 8-year-old boy, that terrifies you. So, but yeah, obviously now I know he was only playing, but back then it was, I better support West Ham then, and I don't regret it. I've sort of just grown up and grown to love the club, even through very, very difficult times, and love every minute of it.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like my fandom with Chicago sports here, where I'm from. Pretty much born into it, following what my dad says, who my dad follows. There's 2 Major League Baseball teams here in Chicago. The Cubs on the north side of the city, the White Sox on the south side of the city, and my dad is from the south side, where basically all his family and friends are White Sox fans, but he's a Cubs fan, and we're sort of the misfits of the bunch, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So I can sort of relate to that. Let's talk a little bit about the podcast. We Are West Ham. I know you have 2 co-hosts, but I want to start with the origin of the podcast. So how did We Are West Ham come to be?
So we were quite fortunate in a way. I mean, I used to run a website called West Ham World. I still do, but it's kind of almost dormant now. But it was just a website, and then a radio station called Love Sport got in touch with me a good few years ago and said, "Look, we're launching this radio station in London. We want to have a fan show for every London club. Do you want to be involved in the West Ham one?" Even though I didn't have a podcast or a YouTube channel or anything like that. And obviously, it's not often you get a chance to be get offered a radio show. So I was like, yeah, go on then. I'm up for that. So I did that for probably the best part of about 18 months. And then Will, who's now with the We Are West Ham team, he sort of came in for the odd show every now and then, and we got on really well, and then decided to sort of join up and rebrand as We Are West Ham. And then COVID happened, and unfortunately Love Sport Radio kind of just went out of business. They had to sort of close the studio and eventually went out of business, and myself and Will decided that we'd during lockdown we'd continue just as a podcast and not a live radio show. And ever since then, because we were releasing every show after we were live on air, releasing it onto all the podcast platforms, so like people can listen back.
Right.
But there, when lockdown happened and the live radio element of it kind of left, we thought, well, we've got a brand here now almost. We've got something. We've got listeners that tune in every week and tweet us, questions. So we just carried it on as a podcast, and thank God for Zoom and things like Skype. So we've been able to then like put our shows up on YouTube now, and we've grown it particularly over the last year, getting lots of ex-pros on, ex-West Ham players, the likes of Tony Cottee,
Yeah.
Tony Gale. But we had Craig Forrest on, that's definitely one worth going and have a watch. That was a brilliant episode. You name them, we're getting them on, and it's mad that it started off just me with a website, and now we're a semi-successful West Ham podcast, and it's just going from strength to strength. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is growing quite a bit. And like you said, you are getting some pretty awesome guests. Tony Cottee's episode rings a bell. I listened to that. When did you know that you may have something? I mean, yeah, we are West Ham. It's not the biggest West Ham channel, but like I said, it is growing. It's still growing, even though COVID has happened and Love Sport has unfortunately subsided. But it's still growing. When did you guys know that you guys actually may have something here that created a pretty solid audience?
I think during the Love Sport days, when we were live on air once a week for about an hour and a half, we knew we had something then, because I think although we didn't really sort of talk about it, we kind of knew that we had something, because we were getting fans call in, we were getting fans tweet us saying they were looking forward to the next episode. We were getting guests on back then, and it was almost like this could grow and grow and grow, even with the radio station. But mostly it's just both Will and I, and obviously Tom's joined us. Tom was involved sort of sporadically on the radio station, but now he's with us full time on the podcast. And it's just our love for the club. And I work in journalism and the media and football media and content creation anyway, as part of my day job. And I think it's as long as you love what you do, you've got something. You've got something. It doesn't matter how many people tune in and listen. As long as you're passionate about what you do and enjoy creating the content and doing the episodes and doing that sort of the promo stuff that we do on side and the YouTube stuff, then you've got something that you can put out there, and doesn't matter how big it is or how small it is, you've got something. And we're just fortunate enough that fans seem to like what we do, and particularly in the States and Australia. We've got a large fan base in the likes of America and Canada and Australia and those parts. So yeah.
So, and you mentioned the audience that you have, and it is spread out all over the world. And thankfully, with technology, that's easier than ever. One thing that I love about the West, not even just the West Ham media space, but West Ham as a whole, is the support that all of the fans give each other. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's a bit more, for lack of a better word, intimate than other clubs, like a Chelsea or a Liverpool, who have such a big fan base. Their media space is so saturated with so many podcasts and so many, blogs and whatnot. And sure, West Ham is a big club. It's certainly not, your Sunday league club, and there are many podcasts, but I do think that there is this sort of support, this sort of ode to everyone that says, yeah, you're West Ham. We support you. You support the club. We support you no matter what. Have you felt that, especially in the media space? Because I feel like maybe other bigger clubs have a little bit more of a cutthroat competitive environment in their media space. I've seen it before, but West Ham doesn't really seem to have that. I mean, yeah, sure, you have your Twitter accounts yelling at each other, but when it comes to, different podcasts, YouTube channels, blogs, etc., for the most part, everyone seems to get on really, really well.
Yeah, I think we do get on really well. There is an element of competitiveness there. I think but that's natural when you've got your own platform and your own channel or your own podcast or your own website. You're naturally going to want to be the biggest and the best in your space.
Right.
But I think where the West Ham sort of space is concerned. There are so many that do it so well, as opposed to, the likes of, just think at the top of my head, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United spaces where you've got one or two that do it very, very well, and then all the rest are kind of sort of like way below.
Yeah.
Doing good content, but sort of nowhere near at the level that the bigger ones are doing it. So it's very hard to compete with those guys. Whereas at West Ham, there's 4 or 5 YouTube channels or podcasts that just do it really, really well. And
Yeah.
they all do it. They all have their own kind of angles and niches within that space, so they can all really compete for the same
Right.
audience without really stepping on each other's toes. And that's what I like about it. You've got ex West Ham employee who does all the exclusive stuff. And he's the only one that does that. You've got the West Ham Fan TV guys that do sort of very sort of niche fan channel stuff, and no one really does that. Hammers Chat, sort of kind of a hybrid in between. So yeah, I think everyone does it differently, but does it very, very well, and I think that's what makes it a little bit easier for us all just to get on with it and not really be that competitive.
Yeah, I agree, and yeah, I agree with everything you just said, and it's one of the things that I really think makes this club great. In terms of the pod, so as you mentioned, Love Sport sort of subsided. You guys have continued it on your own. What are your goals for the pod moving forward? I mean, I know especially in today's day and age, it's hard to look too far ahead since we don't know what the next day will bring. But I mean, maybe you haven't thought about it. Maybe you have. If you have, like, what are some goals or some thoughts you've had about the future?
Well, this season we're putting a little bit more effort into our YouTube channel. We thought it'd be silly not to, given that with the technology like Skype and Zoom, you can record your calls as video as well as audio. So we thought we might as well do that. So we want to grow that, but that's a slow process. It's very. I didn't realise how difficult it was to grow a YouTube channel until we started trying.
What makes it so difficult, you think?
I think. I don't really know. I mean, we're still very, 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 very early days.
Yeah.
And we haven't really promoted it that much yet. I think because we've already got that established, base of listeners on the podcast across like iTunes and Spotify and places like that we haven't really shouted too loudly about the YouTube channel, but we try and direct a few people there. I think we're closing on 100 subscribers, which is pretty good given that we barely shout about it, but we want to do that. But I think that the next thing for us, and we haven't discussed it in too much detail, but is to try and then expand the show into sort of maybe the odd spin-off show, or maybe do 2 episodes a week if we can fit it in, or maybe do. I'd like to try sort of more live, a little bit like the radio show before, live fan phone-ins or something like that. But I know that there are a couple that already do that very well in our space. But I'd like to give it a go and see whether we can make a success of it. But at the moment, it's the world's our oyster. We're just enjoying creating the content, and if we've got an idea and we'll want to run with it, we will do, and then we'll see how it gets on. But I'm a big believer in you might as well try everything and then see what works, and go from there. You don't want to regret not trying anything. You might as well just give it all a go.
Yeah, totally agree with you, and yeah, I totally agree. And it's like you said before, if you're loving what you're doing and you're enjoying it, what you're doing, and you're enjoying it with the people that you're doing it with, the rest of it really doesn't matter. If you're having fun and you're happy, then hey, keep it up. But you guys are good at it, so that also helps too. You guys actually have some talent there. You got to have a little of that. Well, great, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing the channel grow. I've been listening consistently for the last 9 months ish, so I'm really, really excited to see it grow and continue to grow. Let's focus a little bit on the team now. I want to talk about the club we both support. I know we had a chat about a couple months ago, and we had gotten out to a good start. I think it was right after the Tottenham match, so I think we were we were still buzzing after that. and of course that was a smaller sample size. Only a handful of games have been played. Now we're nearly. I think we played 17 matches, so nearly at the halfway point. And hey, I mean, we're 10th right now, but it's so clustered in the top 10 that we're only a few points off top 4. Not saying we're making Champions League by any means, but I mean, halfway through the season, I guess let me ask you this: what grade would you give West Ham at the halfway point? What would well, I guess you guys have different letter grades than we do in the States, but a rating out of 10, I guess. A rating out of 10.
I'll do a rating out of 10. I think I'd give it a 7.
Okay.
Maybe pushing 7.5. I think, there have been times when it's been bad still. You've only got to look at the Brighton home game only a few weeks ago where the way David Moyes lined up was just completely wrong. What was more worrying was the fact that he then afterwards admitted that he got it wrong. Even though everyone saw it the moment he put the lineup out, it was like, no, that's the wrong way of going about it, Dave. And the only one that didn't see it was the Premier League manager. And that, for me, that worried me. I was like, oh no, what's going on here? But he's managed to bounce back. We've won games since. But so there've been some poor times, but then there's been some fantastic times. You mentioned that Spurs game, 3-0 down with 8 minutes to go and getting a point. Thrashing Leicester, thrashing Wolves, winning at Everton last week. Or 2 weeks ago. So, there have been some really, really good moments, but there've also been some bad moments. Scraping a win at home against Fulham. It wasn't particularly great. Yeah, okay, we got the 3 points, but it wasn't pretty. Hanging on against Villa at home wasn't pretty, but we got the job done. I think that's the difference with us this year. Exactly. Is we're getting the job done. And
even like Stockport, even that match, that's a match that we probably that maybe we don't. We lose or it goes to extra time. We don't find that way to nick that goal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the great jobs that David Moyes has done with the squad is that he's made us harder to beat. Defensively, we're a lot more tighter. And going forward, more often than not, we're dangerous. We've got a really, really good bunch of attacking players there that can cause teams problems. So yeah, 7 out of 10. I think a nice platform to build on going into the second half of the season.
Yeah, I would give it a 7.5, just because I give it that extra 0.5, just because of how low expectations were heading to the season and how much we've been able to. I mean, it would have to be a major collapse to be in any sort of relegation battle. It seems like we'll at least have a mediocre mid-table season at worst. Which, listen, I would take that in a heartbeat back in September. You mentioned though, you started or you ended by speaking to our attacking presence, and of course, major shift there in the last week with Sebastian Haller being sold to Ajax, a very big club in itself. Scored a goal in his full debut. I know Haller may be the most divisive topic on West Ham Twitter as of late. What is your stance on him when you look at his West Ham career? How do you think he performed? I mean, and are you happy that he's gone?
Am I happy that he's gone? Probably yes, but and I said this on our podcast this week, was that, I think we all knew that he didn't have a future at the club. We all knew he didn't have a future at the club. We all knew he was going to leave. I think what surprised me was that he was allowed to leave so quickly, and it all happened so quickly, almost in the space of 48 hours, he was gone.
Yeah.
Without having a replacement lined up. And I know Antonio's fit now, but you can never guarantee how long he's going to be fit for.
Exactly.
And for me, that was the risk. But why did we allow? Because even though he didn't, particularly in his last few games, didn't offer a great deal on the pitch, he can still finish. He is still a very, very good striker. He was just playing in the wrong system, and that was why I felt a little bit sorry for him, because he proved on a number of occasions that he can score very, very good goals. He is a finisher. He's not the poor striker that a lot of fans made him out to be. He was just being forced to play in a system that just didn't suit his ability. But even though that was the case, I still think that just keep him for a few more games, keep him on the pitch, or keep him as a bench player while Antonio's back, just so we've got that cover until you found a replacement in the transfer window. And unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. And I know we've got the young player, Odebeko, who's been touted as this, he's going to come up and deputise for Antonio. But I wish Haller all the best. He scored on his debut for Ajax. It took him 7 minutes to score his first goal for Ajax. So
Yeah.
I hope it works out. And I hope he proves a lot of doubters wrong. Yeah, of course. I just hope he proves a lot of doubters wrong, because by no means is he a poor footballer. There's a reason why he was linked with a lot of big clubs before we bought him, and there's a reason why he scored so many goals at Frankfurt in the Bundesliga. He's a very, very good player. We just didn't know how to use him.
I literally couldn't. You took the words right out of my mouth. I could not agree with you more. Sure, I definitely don't think he lit the world on fire. There were times where I questioned his effort. I think his confidence was lacking. Is that 100% his fault? No. Like you said, I think we did not play to his strengths. The system never suited him. But we only have one fit senior striker who is injury prone, who just came off of an injury.
And who's not a natural striker.
Yeah. Yeah, and who's not a natural striker. So, I mean, classic West Ham, right? But I could not agree with you more. And then I know you talked about this on your podcast a couple times. What are your views on a potential new contract for David Moyes? Maybe not in the super near future, but before the beginning of next season. I mean, I think his contract runs out at the end of this one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So, I mean, surely an extension must be coming, or a new contract must be coming, yeah?
I'd be very, very surprised if he doesn't get a new contract. I think he's done enough already this season to warrant it. He's proven all of his doubters wrong. He's proven everyone wrong. Just by coming back to the club and proving that he is the right man. Okay, it could all fall apart very, very quickly, but so far, you can only look at the job that he's done so far, and so far he's done a fantastic job. And yeah, his contract's up at the end of this season, and I'd be disappointed. First and foremost disappointed, but also surprised if he's not given a new deal, because what more can he do? He needs more transfer windows to really build that squad and build that ethos within the club that he's already making a lot of progress with. He's proven that he can do it in the transfer window with the likes of Souček and Sofao and Bowen, Ben Rama to a degree. I think he's still got a lot more to give. So he's proven that he can bring the right players in as well. Put a lot of faith in him. Give him a 3 or 4 year deal. Let him continue the project that he started, and I think we're on the right track with him. He's surprised me, proven me wrong. So he's got to get a new deal, and I think they should give it to him very, very soon, rather than wait until the season's done. Give it to him soon, because that will give the players a big lift as well, knowing that the manager's sticking around as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it seems like they really do enjoy him as their manager. They respect him. They're playing hard for him. But yeah, I think he's surprised everyone, James. I mean, he certainly surprised me. And it's been a pleasant surprise, and I definitely think he deserves a new deal myself. Last question before we wrap it up. So obviously, West Ham have surpassed our expectations thus far. I'm speaking for you, but I feel like I can say that given how we entered the season. So at roughly the halfway point, we are where we are. Definitely in contention for a Europa League spot, without a doubt. Definitely need to improve, but it's there. It's possible. At the end of the season in May, if we were to speak again, what would need to occur this second half of the season for you to sit there in May and say, this was a successful season for West Ham?
I think a top half finish at the very, very minimum. What I don't want to see happen, which happens so often with West Ham, is that we'll have a strong start to the season,
Yep.
and then, as the old saying goes, we come down the Christmas decorations, and the second half of the season is just dire. We almost reached the 35-point, 40-point mark where we're technically safe, and then it all just falls apart. And I think we've got such a good chance this year given how tight it is in that top half of the Premier League, all it takes is 2 wins and you're in the top 4 and results go your way. This season, more than most, it's a real opportunity to maybe sneak into that top 6. Maybe, I'm not saying we will, but we've got an opportunity. We're one of 12 teams technically fighting for a top 4 spot at the moment. So it'd be really disappointing to see us just kind of fall away like we would normally. So I think, come May, a successful season for me is at least top 10. We need to finish in the top 10 for me, I think. And then if we qualify for some form of European football, because they've got that second tier Europa League starting next year as well. So there's technically 3 European competitions up for grabs.
Yeah.
If we can qualify for one of those, happy days. If we don't, not the end of the world. But as long as we show signs of progress towards qualifying for Europe, then I'm happy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you as well, because given where we were in September, to say that it would be an unsuccessful season simply because we didn't qualify for Europe, I think that would be a bit of a stretch given where we were. We've already shown progress under Moyes in this first half of the season, and like you said, you want to see that progress. You want to at least be there in the mix in April, right? With at least a handful of games to go, you at least want to have a shot. Maybe we fall short. Maybe we finish 9th or 10th, and we don't get one of those Europa or the Europa Conference or whatever it's going to be called. But progress. I think that's the word. The key word there is progress. You just want to show some improvement.
Absolutely.
We're not winning the Premier League or anything, but progress. Literally couldn't agree with you more. So yeah, we'll wrap it up, James. Again, really appreciate you coming on again. Really enjoy speaking with you. And why don't you tell the people where they can find content that you and We Are West Ham provides.
Sorry, you cut out there a little bit.
Okay, no worries. I was just saying, can you tell everyone where they can find the content that you provide and the content that We Are West Ham provides?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can find the podcast We Are West Ham podcast we're on all major podcast platforms first and foremost. We are on YouTube. On Twitter, we are _West Ham. We are on Instagram, but use it very rarely. So yeah, we're most active on Twitter, and then you can catch our content on YouTube and any podcast platform, I think. You can catch me personally on Twitter at by James Jones, by James Jones, and mostly just see me rambling about West Ham or some sort. So yeah, that's predominantly where you can find me and the podcast's content. Awesome.
Well, thanks, James. Really a big fan of what you do. Thanks for coming on, man. And yeah, talk soon.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me, mate.